What good does it do to teach them fear? I think it's important to help the children laugh in the middle of this war.
My law's coming for you.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for our weekly film show. And some good news for film lovers in France. If COVID numbers continue to go down, cinemas will reopen mid-December. There'll also be a 9 p.m. curfew. Someone will be happy. Hello, Lisa Nesselson.
Hello. Well, I've ordered a fresh supply of pins and needles to sit on until December 15th. If infection and hospitalization rates continue to drop, even though there will be a curfew, what's new is that a time-stamped movie ticket will authorize you to get home after an 8 p.m. show.
Oh, excellent news. Well, you are going to tell us now what we can watch on demand while we're waiting, starting with a French film about the famous mime artist Marcel Marceau. It's called Resistance, because he was also a resistance fighter in the war.
Before he became the world's most famous mime, Marcel Marceau was a resistance fighter, a Jew who helped save hundreds of Jewish children during the war. The foundations of this film are true, and since Marceau himself didn't speak much about these events before his death in 2007 at age 84, the film's Venezuelan writer-director Jonathan Yagupovich got much of his background from Marceau's 106-year-old cousin who lived to be 108. Take that, Hitler. Resistance stars Jesse Eisenberg as Marcel Marceau, who lives in Strasbourg and works in his father's kosher butcher shop while performing secretly on the side, having been inspired by seeing Charlie Chaplin in the silent classic The Gold Rush. Changing his name to Marceau to seem less Jewish, in the film, we're led to believe he was a decent forger of documents, and apparently he did end up working with U.S. intelligence in that capacity and as a liaison. The initially self-centered Marcel, at first reluctantly and then with devotion, ends up helping orphaned Jewish children escape to the south of France, and then, when the entire country falls to the Nazi occupation, across the Alps to safety in Switzerland. Nobody knew him yet as an entertainer. But leading Gestapo officer Klaus Barbie already had a reputation as the so-called Butcher of Lyon. And it is some of the scenes in which Barbie appears that are the most convincing and harrowing in a very uneven but earnest film.
Okay, well, let's take a look at Resistance.
In every generation, they rise up against us. Sometimes a powerful man, sometimes an army tries to destroy the Jewish people. But here we are, together. You are not alone.
What's the best way to resist? It's not to kill them. It's to survive.
Now, Resistance was due to be shown in French cinemas, but now it's available on demand on the French cable channel Canal+. You said it's earnest. Is it worth seeing?
Well, Marceau did take considerable personal risks to rescue Jewish children, but this film needlessly rescues quite a few war film cliches. And that's too bad, because the movie tries to get at what it is about the Jews that has made them the brunt of horrific persecution throughout history. But this is one of those relatively rare Nazi versus Jew stories that conveys glimmers of altruistic hope. While mourning very personal losses, Marcel and his semi-girlfriend Emma, nicely portrayed by Clémence Posey, resolved that instead of getting back at their oppressors by killing Nazis, the best revenge will be to make sure Jewish children survive the war, start families, and thereby foil Hitler's ambitious plans to obliterate them. It's probably safe to say that nowadays mime is in mild decline and anti-Semitism is on the rise.
And Marceau actually taught Michael Jackson to do his trademark moonwalk, didn't he?
Well, not so fast. Marceau, who called the move walking against the wind, learned it after the war from Etienne Decroux, his teacher, who invented the distinctive glide in place. David Bowie also studied with Decroux. In 1997, Marceau unveiled the statue of Michael Jackson at the Musée Grévin, the Paris equivalent of Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, and the two men definitely admired each other. But apparently, Jackson picked up what became the moonwalk move from street dancers in the U.S. Of course, the true stories of World War II and before have inspired several filmic masterpieces, including two made by people who Hitler planned to murder. When it comes to Klaus Barbie, you cannot top Marcel Ophel's documentary Hotel Terminus, The Life and Times of Klaus Barbie, which won an Oscar in 1988. And when it comes to raison d'etat and anti-Semitism in France, you can't top Roman Polanski's An Officer and a Spy. Marceau and Polanski have something devastating in common besides their artistry. Polanski's mother died in Auschwitz, and Marceau's father died in Auschwitz. Ophel's family escaped the Nazis by emigrating to the U.S. in time.
Well, next, Lisa, to an online festival devoted to lifting up indigenous voices in Australia. Tell us more.
Well, it's probably safe to say that most regions of the planet have historically exploited or oppressed other people who happen to share the territory, or tragically were already there and calling the place home when cruel and or oblivious settlers arrived. Much like native tribes were treated unfairly, so were the Aboriginal people of Australia, who were most definitely there first, treated abominably. Over the course of a century or more, Australia has produced an exceptional number of very good films compared to its population. And of course, Australian actors, from Hugh Jackman to Russell Crowe to the Hemsworths to Nicole Kidman to Mel Gibson to Godfrey Rush to Cate Blanchett, pretty much rule the world. But indigenous voices, once invisible, are emerging with a vengeance. Now, in its 5th edition, the Black Australia Film Festival, devoted to Aboriginal filmmaking, is entirely online this year. It runs from November 28th through December 5th and is visible in France and French territories. Now, the event consists of 5 short films exploring the Black experience and all directed by Australian Aboriginals, including Showing Melbourne to Maningrida, initiated by and starring famed traditional dancer and Aboriginal actor David Gupilil, who made his debut at age 16 in Nicholas Roeg's Walkabout. The documentary was made in 1973, just 6 years after Aboriginals were granted Australian citizenship. Aboriginal people have appeared in movies for a long time, but all such films were directed by white people until the 1980s. So there's reason to seek out and celebrate native talent now that it's blossoming.
Okay, Lisa, well, here's a sampler of this year's Black Australia Online Film Festival. A glimpse of the Black Australia Festival. Now, Lisa, we're living in times where people have short attention spans. Tell us about an Austrian film that's only 14 minutes long.
Fast Film is an experimental gem made in 2003 by genius Austrian stop-action animator and multimedia artist Virgil Vidrich. It took 15 animators to make it, taking images from other movies and painstakingly applying them to sheets of paper, which were then folded or torn and rephotographed frame by frame. Now, there are visual effects that can only be done convincingly with computers, and then there are things that can only be done painstakingly by hand. The composite effect in fast film is something that can only be done by hand. We all have heads full of movies, but Vidrich manages to get them out again in delightful ways. If you watch the film closely, there is a story here involving a man, a woman, and a chase scene featuring a train.
Okay, well, let's have a taste. Here's a glimpse of Fast Film.
Fast Film was made by Amour Fou, a film production and distribution company based in Vienna and in Luxembourg. And this year, they're celebrating their 25th anniversary. So while waiting for the day that a full, in-person, well-deserved retrospective can safely be held, they're making a birthday gift of several of their productions to watch for free online from almost anywhere in the world. The virtual birthday party is on through December 3rd. And if you've got a device with a web connection, this film is available on their website. See it.
Well, Lisa, if you're looking for a gift for a French-speaking film buff in your life, there's a gorgeous new box set of 6 restored films by a 20th century Japanese master. Tell us about Ozu in colour.
Yasujiro Ozu's first films were made in the silent era, so in black and white. But starting in 1958, his color films, all 6 of which figure in this remastered release, are splendid. To situate the director's reputation, as recently as 2012, Ozu's 1953 film Tokyo Story, which isn't part of this item, was named Greatest Film of All Time in a poll of 358 international filmmakers conducted by the film magazine Sight and Sound. Now, I don't go along with that, but I do go along with the fact that Ozu, who was born in 1903 and died on the exact same date, December 12th, in 1963 at age 60, is a director whose films are well worth experiencing. He made comedies and dramas, and his trademark was placing the camera very low in the frame.
And as we move more and more to streaming, box sets remain a real art form here in France, don't they?
Absolutely. Many of the 85 companies here that issue DVDs move mountains to find rare bonus material and often commission new liner notes or even entire booklets by specialists to enhance enjoyment. So not only do you get soothing titles like Equinox Flower, Good Morning, Floating Weeds, Late Autumn, The End of Summer, and An Autumn Afternoon, here they've thrown in 4 bonus films in black and white, 2 full-length documentaries, vintage trailers, and other goodies. Ozu excelled at finding the human connections in relatively mundane situations. The dialogue is in Japanese, the subtitles are in French, but the artistry transcends any one culture or language.
Okay, well, we'll leave you with a taster of Ozu's movies. Thank you so much for joining us, Lisa Nesselson. Remember our website. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.
You have enjoyed your program with Air France Protect, promising you a pleasant trip with total peace of mind.